So that's going to do it for our exploration into Strange Darling. Did I like it? Did I hate it? Let's find out. I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. Strange Darling came out in 2023. But is it syllabus worthy? Well, let's find out. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below, and it'll give you a pretty good overview of what the Horror Movie Syllabus is all about. Basically, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But that's not what this video is about. This is our Is It Syllabus Worthy series. This is where I take a recommendation, usually from you guys, something you leave in the comments to one of the other videos, something I haven't seen before, and I watch it for the first time, and then I decide, is it syllabus worthy? Is it worthy enough? Is it good enough, notorious enough, interesting enough to be on the horror movie syllabus? And today, the movie that we're looking at is Strange Darling. And Strange Darling was recommended by me, frankly. This is a movie that I wanted to see. I had seen a trailer for it. I had heard some buzz in the horror community about it. And the buzz seemed to be know as little as possible going in and just enjoy the ride, which intrigued me. And the trailer intrigued me too. It was cut fast enough that I didn't feel like it spoiled too much, but it gave me a vague idea of what I thought the movie was going to be about. And so, given that this movie is one of many great horror movies that have come out in theaters this year, and it's hard for me to get out to the theater to see movies because I'm frankly watching movies for the channel a lot of the time. This is an opportunity for me to go to see something in the theater and then use it for the channel. So that was kind of a way I bent it to my will a little bit. And this was the one that I chose out of the many great movies that came out this year, like Long Legs and Cuckoo. And there's several movies that came out. And frankly, we might be talking about some of them on the channel in the future. But right now, we're going to talk about Strange Darling. But that's what I knew about it. I'd seen the trailer once. I'd heard, don't know anything about it when you can go into it. And then just kind of let it happen to you. Let it wash over you. Let the experience wash over you. So that's exactly what I did. And did I like it? Did I hate it? Let's find out. Like I said, the movie that we're talking about today is Strange Darling. Strange Darling came out in 2023, although that was a festival release, and it didn't really get wide distribution until 2024, which is when most of us who've seen it probably saw it. I saw it in 2024 for sure. And it's directed by J.T. Molnar, who I'm not familiar with, and doesn't seem like he has a huge body of work, but he did do another movie called Outlaws and Angels, and like Strange Darling, got a lot of praise for how it was filmed, the way it looked, the use of film in the movie. So he's got a bit of a style to him in terms of being like a little bit more of a throwback director. But we're going to get into all that in just a minute. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a man and a woman who are on a date, or maybe more accurately are looking to hook up, and the woman is very cautious and kind of wary of the guy, who seems like he might be a little bit weird, even though he's charming. And she's kind of worried about, trusting and everything like that, but decides to take the plunge. And then predictably, or is it predictably, things don't quite go as planned on this date slash hookup, and things get a little bit weird and hijinks start to abound. But of course, I'm going to stop there so as not to spoil the movie for you. And that's key, because the biggest thing about this movie is not having it spoiled. Well, I think it is. Let me explain. Going into this movie with not knowing what's going to happen is going to enhance your experience a little bit. It's also going to make it a little bit challenging to talk about it. So we're going to kind of dance around a little bit. We're going to maybe give you a few things that you're going to know about. Things that I think get revealed pretty early on, or possibly even in the trailer. So hopefully not too spoilery. But one of the things you have to know about this movie, or that you will learn almost immediately in this movie, is that it is told in nonlinear fashion. It's broken up into 6 chapters, and they're told non-sequentially, out of order. And it's done kind of like Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction in a way. It's told in a nonlinear or out of order fashion so as to have reveals happen at certain times, and to recontextualize scenes that you've just seen or that you saw earlier in the film. And it does this very, very well. By doing this out of order thing, the movie kind of has a bit of a 90s feel to it in a good way. It has that kind of, weird out of sequence editing, and the way the story is being told feels very 90s, feels frankly very Tarantino. And in the 90s, like when Tarantino first broke big with Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, there were a lot of knockoffs, a lot of people trying to do this, shooting movies and telling the stories non-linearly just because that was kind of cool and in. And this movie feels like the best of those knockoffs in the sense that it's doing non-linear for a reason. It understands how come Pulp Fiction did it and how there's a benefit in withholding certain information from the audience until a later time, and by telling it non-sequentially rather than showing it in a flashback is a way to do that feels fresh and original and fun. And that's one of the things that I like about this movie, is it does feel like a very fresh take on slasher genre, stalker subgenre, revenge subgenre. Hard to tell. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but it does give it a fresh take just from how it's made, with the style of it, the narrative structure of it. And, I said earlier, going into it without knowing anything is key. I don't know that key is maybe the right word, because it's not like the movie has exactly a twist per se. It's kind of more like Pulp Fiction, where things will happen earlier in the movie and then later in the movie something happens that recontextualizes it, makes you look at it a little bit differently, makes you kind of want to watch the movie again. In fact, I would argue that if you watch the trailer, you might be able to kind of guess what the so-called twist would be. Again, I quibble about using the word twist because I feel like you kind of know how things are going to go a little differently early on in the movie, but I feel like this movie just keeps kind of throwing curveballs at you and recontextualizing what you've seen and changing the narrative and making it feel like something you haven't seen before, or really taking the story in places you weren't expecting it to go in a very effective manner. So I saw a review of this that said that even if the movie was spoiled for you, it would still work good. And I think I would agree with that, because it's frankly so well made and such good filmmaking that you're going to enjoy the ride, even if you kind of already know where it's going, either because somebody told you or because you were able to kind of figure it out, which I figured out a little bit of it maybe, but it still took me in places I didn't know where to go. But even if I knew everything, I don't think I'd care, because it's really well made. JT Mulner has done a really great job on the look of this film, well, more on that in a second, the pacing of it. Again, he's got that fresh angle on horror subgenres that doesn't really make it feel stale, gives it a little bit more energy, a little bit more life. And again, he knew how to use the nonlinear storytelling to his advantage. He wrote it as well as directed it. So he's definitely in charge of this, and he understands the value in telling a story out of order. The movie looks fantastic, and that's JT Mulner, but it's also Giovanni Ribisi. And that was one of the things that got this movie a little bit of buzz, is that Giovanni Ribisi is the director of photography for this movie. He's in charge of the cinematography, and it looks fantastic. It's very well lit. The movie's lighting, the use of light in this movie is exceptional. The Oregon setting that they have for the woods is gorgeous, and it's shot really well. It's shot on 35 millimeter film, and it you can tell, it just stands out. The aesthetic of this film, it just looks really good, and that is in no small part due to Ribisi and his use of film. Now, one little quibble is that the movie starts with a title card telling you that it's shot on 35 millimeter film, which I don't think was very necessary, and honestly felt a little both pretentious and kind of sad at the same time. Right off the bat, I was kind of like, ugh, but the movie still wound up winning me over, because it's just that good. It's that well made. It's using practical effects. It's got a lot of, action and its style. It's got a lot of style with the lighting and the camera work and the performances and everything. It's just got a lot of style, and it feels like it's maybe style over substance, but it does feel like it still has substance. It feels like it's trying to say something, but I'm not sure if that's actually true, or if it's just that the performances of the movie are good enough, so good, if you will, that you feel like this movie's more substantive than it actually is. The movie stars Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner as your two leads. And Willa Fitzgerald, who is, I knew her first from the TV show version of Scream. She's also in the the Reacher TV show. If you guys watched the Jack Reacher TV show, and she was in the Fall of the House of Usher miniseries, which was fantastic. I like Willa Fitzgerald quite a bit. This is the best I've seen her be. She is exceptional in this movie. She's bringing a career best performance so far. I mean, I haven't seen everything she's done, but it's exceptional. This is honestly like award worthy. They won't give this an award, but it really deserves it because she's so good in this movie, portraying so many different facets of emotions that you're just engaged and you're connected to her, and she keeps you connected with her throughout the movie, and that's important. I can't say much more than that, but it's important that you stay connected with her throughout the movie, and she nails that. She does vulnerability. She has a strength to her. She has a wry sense of humor about her. Everything about this, a sex appeal, everything about her works in this movie. It's like a role that she was just built for. She knocks it out of the park. And then there's Kyle Gallner, who has his own bona fide horror credentials. You know, he was in the Scream 5. He was in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. He was in Smile. To me, he's always going to be Beaver Cassidy, Casablancas from Veronica Mars, which, by the way, if you haven't seen Veronica Mars, it's a great show. You should watch that. One of my favorites. But Kyle Gallner is a very capable actor who is doing some really strong work here too. His role is very complex. It seems like it could be one note, but I feel like he gives it layers in a way that enhances the story, enhances the narrative, and also enhances the movie as a whole. Again, it kind of feels like it's giving some depth to this movie that may honestly just be a thrill ride. It may not have anything deeper to say than that. I've thought about it a bit, and I haven't really come up with what the deeper themes or messages of this movie is. I don't know what Molnar's trying to say, but I mean, he may not be trying to say anything. He may just be trying to say, have a good time watching this really fun take on horror and action and revenge and cat and mouse and all that, because it's largely a cat and mouse game in this movie, and it's working really well, again, because the performances of the leads make it feel urgent and important and interesting. And then rounding out the cast, you've got Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey, and they are kind of a comedic relief kind of role, but they also kind of goes in a different way. They're great. They're great. Of course they're great. And they're kind of unexpected in the movie. Again, this movie goes places where you're not really expecting it to go, but everybody in this movie is bringing an A-game performance and giving this movie maybe more depth than it actually has. But that's okay. It's okay if it's kind of false depth, because you don't need it to have a lot of depth. What you need it to do is be good, to engage you. This movie grabs you early, holds on, never lets you go. Part of that, again, is being out of order, out of sequence. So it can start out with something action-packed and then kind of fill you in and show you how we got here. And then at the same time, again, kind of reframing everything you've just seen. And it works extremely well. It's storytelling at its best. It's filmmaking, arguably, at its best. And again, low budget. This movie is not an expensive movie, but it looks fantastic. And it's just got quality acting top to bottom. And it's well written. Everything about this movie is working extremely well. There is, like I said, maybe not as much depth as you would like. And maybe if you know the twists, because there's probably arguably more than one, maybe it's not as enjoyable that if you know what's going on. I doubt that, but that's a possibility. It's maybe the potential knocks on this otherwise fantastic movie. But I do think it is a fantastic movie. But is it syllabus worthy? Well, let's find out. So, is Strange Darling syllabus worthy? Yes, absolutely yes. I'm sure you could tell from the review. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I'm very enthusiastic about it. I was excited to go in to see it, and it met my expectations, if not actually exceeded them. I was super impressed with this movie, top to bottom. Everything about this movie, I wouldn't call it flawless, but I'd say near flawless. It's a really great movie that kind of knows what it wants to be. You know, I said I wasn't sure what exactly it was trying to say, or the messaging it was trying to say. It has some social commentary to it that, again, I don't want to get into that stuff too much because I don't want to spoil the movie. There's some interesting social commentary stuff here, but at the end of the day, I think it just wants to be a thrill ride. I think it just wants to be a good, fun time that surprises you, keeps you guessing, keeps you on the edge of your seat, and on those levels, it succeeds like gangbusters. It's a really fun movie that for sure I want to get on the syllabus. The question would be where to put it, because I'm not sure what subgenre this fits into, because the movie has a lot of moving parts. I mean, like I said, I hinted earlier, you could argue that it's a slasher movie or a stalker movie or a revenge film or an action horror movie. There's a few things that you could go through, and there's maybe a lot other ones that we could talk about, but I'm not going to, because I feel like if I dive too deeply into what kind of subgenres it might be able to qualify for, I'm going to spoil the movie even more than I already have, and I would really not want to do that for you, because I do think it is best if you go in as blind as possible. If you don't know much about this movie, I think that's going to be the best way to experience it. There are, again, I use this word loosely, twists. I don't think it's twists so much as I think the movie just kind of changes a bit, and then you are kind of forced to realize, again, would you call Pulp Fiction a movie that has a twist? Most people would say no, but that's really the vibe you get on this, where like you see something and you may not fully understand what you're seeing, and then later on in the movie you go, oh, that's what this was about, and that's what this movie does. And honestly, some of them I think might be a little bit guessable, if you will, as twists, but I don't care, because the ride is so good. I don't think it matters if you kind of get quote unquote spoiled on this one, because it's just so well made. It's so entertaining. I'm really high on this one, obviously, and I think a lot of the people were too. It got really good reviews. The buzz on it was very positive, and people did a really good job of not talking too much about the specifics and particulars. And hopefully, I managed to do the same in this video, because if you haven't seen it, you should absolutely see it. It's a fantastic movie. Everything about it I liked, and the main reason why I decided to recommend this to myself for the channel is I don't feel like it got enough shine. In a summer full of really great horror movies that came out, it feels like this one kind of got short shrift. It didn't get as much attention. It wasn't a huge box office hit. It didn't get a lot of buzz like Longlegs did, for example, which well deserved. But it's kind of fallen through the cracks a little bit. So I definitely want to put a light on it, bring it to your attention if you haven't checked it out, to implore you to check it out. Maybe you won't love it as much as me, but I'd be surprised if you absolutely hated it. And if you did, let me know in the comments. We'll have a conversation about it. I respect other opinions, but I feel confident that you're going to at least like, if not love, Strange Darling. So by all means, check it out. So that's going to do it for our exploration into Strange Darling. As you can tell, I'm enthusiastic about it and I love it, and I think you guys should check it out too. It is definitely one worth checking out. It's worth your time for sure. And now it's time for a Horror Trivia Pursuit card. As usual, I'm going to read a card right here on camera and try to answer it and hopefully not embarrass myself. And let's go with the killer category, because it's not that hard to figure out that there's some killer aspects to this movie. And the question is this: in what Halloween film from 1978 to 1989 does antagonist Michael Myers not appear? This one's super easy, guys. I think even the most basic of horror fans probably knows this one. This is a pretty well-known thing, that at one point in the Halloween franchise, they stopped using Michael Myers and they went in like an anthology route. They wanted to do something a little bit different, and they didn't have Michael Myers. Arguably, there's an argument to be made that Michael Myers is technically in that movie, but we're not going to dig into it too much there. That's a conversation for another time. But there is one movie that he didn't appear in as a character, and they found out that people didn't like that and that they wanted to have it be more Michael Myers, and so they quickly retooled and brought him back into the franchise, and then the rest of the franchise kept having him in it. And hopefully you know this answer. It's super easy. I'm giving you a little bit of time to think about it, but honestly, this movie was underrated when it came out. It got a lot of negative buzz and people didn't like it. It was kind of a box office bomb because no Michael Myers was in it. And now it's been recalibrated and people have looked at it with fresh eyes and said, no, this actually was underrated. It's actually quite great. But now I contend, in controversial opinion here, that it's now overrated. People are praising it too much. It's a perfectly fine movie. It's good, but it's not the amazing thing that people say it is now, nor is it the horrible thing that people said it was then. It's fine. It's good. It's not one of my favorites, and I know there's a lot of people that love it. It's their favorite of the series, which is ridiculous, frankly. But controversial stuff here going on. So hit me in the comments below if you disagree. But yeah, it's definitely one that is well known because of this issue, because Michael Myers is not in it. It's one of the more famous Halloweens for that. But which one is it? Do you know? Lock in your answer or lock in a guess and wrap it up, because here I go. Of course, my answer is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. That is the movie that didn't have Michael Myers, and I remember as a kid seeing it and being confused and disappointed that no Michael Myers was in the movie. It's so much so that I couldn't even pay attention to what was going on. I was so distracted by this. And I remember even getting the novelization of the movie before it came out. And, as a kid, and I read it, and I was like, wait, we kept waiting for Michael Myers to appear. And I never finished the book before I actually got to the movie. So I just kept thinking Michael Myers would show up later on, and definitely was confused. And, I was a kid, so what do you expect? But I can understand why people had their issues with it. But that was my answer. Michael Myers is not in Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And I'll double check the card to make sure I'm right. But yeah, it says Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, 1982. It is the only film in the series to not feature Michael Myers. Right. So yeah, that one, super easy, guys. Right. I expect that you all got that. And if you didn't get it, what was your guess? What was your guess? Was it Halloween Resurrection? We all love that one, right? Michael Myers and Busta Rhymes. Hey. But anyways, that's gonna do it for our video. Please see Strange Darling and let me know what you think, because it's fantastic. And keep recommendations coming. Like, I gave myself a recommendation, but I like it better when you guys give them to me, and you guys do a really good job with it. We've had some great recommendations lately. Lots of stuff that's been syllabus-worthy, so keep them coming. Until next week when we do something completely different, I'm just going to say, class dismissed.